Hey, and welcome back to VFX Tutors. As you know, I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be starting some shot work. So in our previous one we did some super exciting folder setup and some directory setup, which is going to be really important for keeping everything organized. So now we're going to actually start tracking some shots. So in our previous one we've done our layout, or our technical layout, where we've set up our scan and scaled it to the right size. So now we're going to bring in our plates and we're going to start tracking them. And as you know, I've probably got a load of tracking tutorials on here that if you've watched them, you probably don't need to watch this. But if you want a refresher, cool, you can come for it and watch it again. But yeah, we'll be going through. I won't do every single shot because they're quite simple shots. Most of them are going to be like nodal shots. There's not really that many that's moving. But yeah, it'll be the same all the way throughout. I'll just track one, and then I'll go through and do the rest afterwards. You don't need to see me tracking every single one because they're going to be very much the same. So yeah, let's hope you guys have been enjoying this tutorial series. I know this has been a really long one, but generally when you're doing projects, they do take quite a long time. Although, like, when you calculate all the hours into the tutorials, at this point it's probably only taken me a couple of days worth of time to get this far, but talking through it obviously takes a little bit longer. But yeah, I'm going to stop going on. Don't forget that like and subscribe, and let's get tracking our shots. And thanks for watching. Okay, so I've opened up 3D Equalizer. I'm not going to go through every single sort of every button and things, because I've probably done that already in every single. There are loads of tutorials on 3D Equalizer. If you want to learn more about 3D Equalizer, just go to my playlist, and there are literally like 100 tutorials or something like that. That will cover everything that you probably need to know. So yeah, we're just going to get going. So I'll still talk through what I'm doing, but just not super detailed. So yeah, so we've got our window open, and I usually always put mine into basic, just because it has everything here and it's easy for you guys to see and for me to record it all in one screen. So up at our top left we have our cameras and our sequence camera. So the first thing that I'm going to do is load in my sequence camera. So I'm going to go over to the right here and select browse, and I'm going to go to my O2 folder, and I have my elements folder, and I have my BO1 folder. So I've got the shots, the files that I exported out. So I've got my element one, which is my light probes, and I've got my BO1. And you'll notice that I've got two in here now. So I've got the original footage that I've shot, and wasn't like that, but yeah. And because this is 5K full frame, I don't really want to work in that resolution because it's take forever to work and render in that. So I've just reduced mine down to 4K. So you can do that. It's fairly easy to do. When I went through the transcoding process, you can choose to do that whether if you want. So when we transcode the footage, you can choose whether to do it full frame or crop to 4K, just so it's easier to work with. So I'm just going to select OK. And there we have our footage. So the first thing that I will do is go to my 8-bit color conversion, change my gamma to 2.2, so it brings up my proper sort of color space, or close to. And what I will do is playback and export buffer compression file. And this means that we're going to basically cache out our image sequence, so it's easier for us to play through. Even though this camera is pretty much a lock-off, it's still important that we do our cameras properly, because when we do our lighting, we're only going to do our lighting setup once, and this is basically our foundation of our shot from which we'll be using the scan. So if you haven't got this footage already, don't forget you can download it in the transcoding section. It's free to download, or you can buy me a coffee. It's up to you. You don't have to pay for any of it. But if you want the footage, you can download the raw footage from the transcoding one, I think it is. But it's here somewhere. I'll link it in the description. And hopefully it shouldn't take too long. Cool, then we'll just import it in. I'm pretty sure this is just going to be, if we play through it, press spacebar. We've just got some very minor camera shake on it, which I don't know how because it was on the tripod. I think it's because it was quite windy. Cool, so I'm just going to pretend that I don't have the data for this. I do. I can go into the metadata and check because it's all recorded off the onto the metadata off the camera. But because we're going to do lineups anyway, it's not going to matter so much because we have the scan. Like if you have the scan, it makes everything so much easier. And if you don't, you kind of need to dig through your data. So the first thing that I will do is go to my focal length and set my film back height and width. So we're not shooting on a black magic anymore. We actually have a red epic. So it should be quite easy to find the sensor size for this. So I always shoot full frame. So that's going to be at the 5120 by 2700 resolution. And obviously that's quite a lot. And if you did change your resolution on the camera, it crops it on the sensor. So if we shot at 4K HD, it would be cropping the sensor to get that resolution. I believe we can just put the full frame width on it, or let's try the 4K because we have cropped it. So we'll go 22. If we were tracking on the original plate, we'd have to use that one. But I think actually maybe let's try it with the original first. So let's do the film back height. No, let's do the 4K because we have cropped it. I always sometimes get this mixed up when you do crop. That's why it's always good to work on original plates. Cool. So we've only put it in the film back height and left our width on passive. So if our resolution is correct, it will match. So we've got 1166. We've got 1166 and 22.11 here. So that's correct. So if we do the other one, so if we do 14.58 millimeter, so we've got 14.58 millimeter and we've got 27.65. So we've got 27.63. So it's very slightly different. So I think from the resolution, there's been like an extremely small crop. So I don't think with this amount of difference between it, I don't think it will affect us that much. But for this sake, we will, because we're getting very accurate representation with our sensor size here, I'm gonna go with 11.66 and make sure you type in millimeters because that's exact. That's exactly what we're reading here, 22.21. I can't remember what I filmed this as. I expect it was probably 18, but because it's a Super 35, it probably won't be 18 millimeter, but we'll see. So now we've got that sorted out. We don't really need to change anything else. I do have lens grids, but because we've got the scan, it's just actually easier for me to just do it to the scan. So I'm just going to right click, go to models here at the top left, add new, import OBJ file. And I'm going to go to onset, layout, set scan layout, and click OK. So this might take a little bit of time. I shouldn't do because it's not a hugely big scan, but most of these shots, this whole project is basically trying to intertwine all the sort of departments. So this is not super good. This is not about doing complicated camera moves. And even so, like doing complicated camera moves isn't that difficult. It's more of making sure that your match move is consistent and working within the pipeline of so other departments can pick it up. So it might take a little bit of time for it to load in. Cool. So if we go to press F6, we can see that we've got our set scan. And what we'll do is go to 3D, select my 3D model. I'm going to select, first thing I want to do is go to 3D model, is reference only. So when you do save it, it's only saving as a reference. And I'm going to turn performance rendering off because it's quite annoying for it to flick on and off. But feel free to leave it on if you want. So if I press F5, I can center the models and you can see it's all laid out. So almost on every single shot, because I have got the texture mapping, I can use that if I really want to. Or you can just do manual lineup without the textures. So you might not always have the textures. So I'm just going to change my alpha so it's a little bit clearer. And let's try and figure out which way this is. And we're backwards. Cool. So if you don't have the textures, you don't need it. It just makes things a lot faster and a lot easier, and you'll generally get a more accurate representation because you can just survey to the textured parts. But you can do manual lineups, like because we've got a pretty decent scan, we can get something that's relatively close here. So I will do the manual lineup just because we don't really do much of that. So what I will do is, it doesn't particularly matter what frame we're on because it's nodal. What we'll do is if you just select extract vertex, hold control, then left click, you'll make a lineup point. So now you can click and drag. You're not moving the geometry, you're actually moving the camera. So you want to place a couple of these down first because it can. So I'll hold Alt and left click to deselect, because it can go a little bit crazy if and we can sort of see here that probably our lens is a little bit too wide. Or maybe not, maybe. Let's not play around with that too much. Let's just get this some of these points in. So I'm just picking up very obvious areas that I can see. And if you just want to use the texture, to line it up, you're perfectly welcome to do that. It does make things a lot easier. Let's go full frame. So I want to try and get this corner up here. You see, it doesn't take that long to get sort of a decent lineup. This means if we were doing it with the textures, we probably would have just almost had it, almost finished by now. But so I'm not super keen on that focal length. But we'll just keep lining it up. Sort of get something fairly rough. So we can do a match frame. So I'm also going to, because I've cropped it, I am going to check my other sensor size. Just to see, because it should be lining up fairly well now, but it's good to sort of check against other. I just want to do a sanity check, so 14.58 millimeter. Obviously that's going to change quite a lot. So if we match the frame now, and you can see how much now that's actually fitting to, because I don't have a lens that's lower than 18 millimeter. So you can see how much that's changed in the field of view. And that's probably the most important thing, is getting your correct field of view right. Because I know it's not going to be anything less than 18 millimeters. So it's always worth checking, always sanity check yourself, no matter how much you think you're right. Always double check, because even though if things don't look right or something's a little bit odd, chances are it probably is a little bit odd and something's not quite right. So if we were getting lineups where our focal length was much lower, that we're clearly got the wrong sensor size. And this is actually the first time I've actually I've not tracked any. This is the first time I've actually used this footage for lineups, so I'm learning it as I go along as well. So I wasn't too sure how much of a difference it would be if we set the cropped version to the full frame version, but obviously that makes quite a large difference with the field of view. And you can see we're getting quite a nice lineup now. All our edges are sort of fitting. So let's change this to 18. Cool, and you can see we're getting a pretty decent lineup. And that's pretty much how you would go through and do it manually. But because we do have the textures, we can do a comparison and we can get a much better result. Like because we're obviously not lined up here, and we want the best possible result, basically. So now we know we've got kind of the right sort of lineup, and you can continue doing this and you can store pose and refine it. But if you've gone to the effort of creating this set scan and doing it all properly, you have to use it, really, because it's only going to make your life easier. So now we can sort of see our lineup's pretty good. The only thing that we're missing is the distortion, really. But now we have our textures. We don't even need our lineup points. We can delete those. And we can find, there we go, look, we use the computing there, and it's quite hard to tell. It's actually quite hard to tell where that is in regards to the thing, so we'll just pick this corner here. And we're pretty close, to be honest. We're not that far off. So we'll extract polygon because there's probably not a vertex in that corner. And it just means now we've got absolutely loads of things to line up to that we can get pretty much an absolute perfect lineup. And this means that we will get much better results and faster results. That's it. With a lot of this stuff, with a lot of Matchmove stuff, if you have the scan, half the battle is getting a nice lineup. Once you've got that, everything's it's really quite simple. It's mostly, the hard part is manual tracking if you have to do manual tracking, but we are not doing any manual. If you end up doing manual tracking in this, you've done something drastically wrong, basically, because these are just lock-offs. Cool, so we can get this eye of a iris, I believe it is. And I could have shot lens grids, and we could have got a quick result of our lensing straight away. Purely because of, I would say every time you should do your lens grids if you have time, but because we were quite tight for time, I knew that I could just do this anyway without the lens grids, because my main focus point is getting this scan, and it's going to be the most important thing out of all your projects, basically. Having a good set scan, it goes through all departments. So I'm literally just going around and finding really easy identifiable points. Making sure that I've got a nice spread. And we can update this mesh as we do go into shot work, because we don't need it for necessarily everything. So you've got quite a bit of chromatic aberration around there in the lights. Probably because it's such a white, it was a super sunny day, but you barely notice it from the distance. So I think we've got enough. Like half our lineup points are actually ending up in the correct place already, so it's always a good sign. Definitely want to get some stuff back here. Points are a little bit more reliable. Cool, so I think I got enough points. We got loads. You know what, let's get some on the bench as well, may as well. This is going to help with our actual distortion in the center, because we've got a lot around the edge, but not so much in the center. You can see how much easier it is to sort of pick areas to get a much better lineup. And this is going to help with our distortion as well. And if we get one good distortion, we can reuse this across, we can use this template across all the other shots as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this on 18mm. I'm going to go to the classic LD, just so it's simpler, and turn on my quartic and distortion. I'm going to go to Windows, Parameter Adjustment Window. I'm going to turn off my quartic. Try adaptive and brute force and see what results you get. So you're going to do these one at a time. Just going to pull that off to the right so it doesn't disappear. I'll press Alt C to solve. And you can see it's solved our distortion, but we've still not got a great lineup. We probably want to, let's see. We can always get this better, and it's probably because of we need to do, because although it's definitely probably 18mm, but because we do a focal focus distance, it's going to probably be a little bit different. So I'm going to adjust my focal length, and you can see how much that's reduced it quite a lot. And it's only a half a millimeter or 47mm off. And you can see how that's massively changed. And you can see how our lineup's looking. Apart from slight texture warping, I guess, it's looking pretty perfect. Maybe we can get one more in here just to help it along. And don't forget, like, your scan's not going to be absolutely perfect. There's going to be there's going to be a certain amount of shrinkage in it. And you can see even this plant is pretty, these plants are pretty close. So now I've done that, and what I will do is just, if you're in a pretty good place, you can adjust them all together. And hopefully that shouldn't cause much of an issue. They should just fine tune between them. Just stop. It's probably, if it's not improving, you just turn it or stop it and press Alt C. And you can turn it all to adaptive all and see how that fares. See if that gets you a better result. Sometimes it does. Works in different ways. But the main thing you want to be when you're solving distortion and stuff like that is making sure you're not adding any sort of weird stuff. But we can see here our lineup's pretty much perfect. Cool. So what I'll do, I will just save that. So, like I said before, we've got our 01 Booble folder. And these are the ones that we made before. So if you haven't done that, watch the tutorial before. And we don't actually have a Matchmove. So we'll just make a new directory. We'll call this CMM. This stands for Camera Matchmove. And make a new directory, and I'll just call this 3DE. And you want to make sure that you call it Booble _ B01 CMM E01, just so we know that's related to that. Cool. So now we've done that, we can probably just turn these off. Hide selected points. Right click. And you want to make sure that you turn these off. Calculation disabled. And we can add new point set. And we'll just call this SF for single frame. And we'll just middle mouse click and drag them under there. So now we've tidied it up. So this should be a pretty simple shot to track. It's not really moving apart from some jitter. So now we've got our lineup. We'll just store it again just in case we lose it, but it should be okay. So now we'll just start tracking. So making a tracking marker is hold Control and left click. And you shouldn't need to play around with anything. Engage marker and just click track. And if you center 2D, You can see we've got quite a bit of jitter, but it's fine. You want a bit of camera jitter. So I'm just going to go through, and I don't think I've actually, we can just do this as a nodal, because it basically is just a nodal. So you don't actually need that many points for a nodal shot. So if you're tracking something like normal, you need a minimum of 6. But if you set your camera to nodal, you can have a minimum of 3. So if you go camera, tab here, and I know that like having a minimum of doing the minimum is sometimes quicker and probably is absolutely fine for this. And you probably actually want to make sure that you get a better array of points. But if we go to camera constraints, no constraint, and fixed camera position constraint, this is basically going to say camera's on the tripod. We only need to do rotations. So now this will allow us to solve with just 3 points. So if I press Alt-C, use result, and you see it's solved with just using 3 points. Let's recall pose because I forgot to survey those. So let's go back to F5. Select our points, and you go edit, project points on 3D models. Sometimes it won't do it because of the clipping plane. So just keep going. You can adjust the clipping plane if you want, but sometimes it's just to zoom in. So now we've projected those onto the points, and it's always good to double check that they are actually projected onto safe geo. And they are. So press F5, press Alt-C now. And it'll probably be a little... we need to turn off fixed camera position for now because we accidentally solved it in that position. Recall the pose. So I surveyed it. Let's put the fixed camera position constraint on it now. Press Alt-C. That's strange. It's not letting me do it, but anyway, let's it should let you do it. Anyway, doesn't matter. Might be because I don't have enough. You should be able to do it with a minimum of 3. But like I say, for something like this, I would probably still do enough points for the basic minimum solve. I don't know why that is. I think maybe because I solved it first on nodal before projecting, so that's my fault. So press Alt-C now. Let's put it in the correct place. And you can see it's made almost no difference. But I am interested to understand why that wasn't working. So, okay, so it is, I don't know why. It might have changed it that you still need a minimum of 6. I could not tell you, to be honest. I can't remember. So if we just full frame, we see everything is on with the fixed camera position. We go to our curve editor. We should have no, yeah. So our positions are locked off basically. There's nothing there. So all of our animations on our rotations. Though we've got some strange stuff going on here. So let's actually turn no constraint off. And let's go to our, if I already got it open somewhere. So it's always good to check. Well, I think that's probably fine. We have some slight jitters in there. Because it's quite possible that it's not all in the rotations. Because I don't have a very good tripod, basically. And that's what that pretty much comes down to. So I can just do the adjust again on all of this. And it'll probably just fine tune it a little bit. Before I press Alt-C again. So, yeah, I probably should get a decent tripod. My tripod is not great, to be honest. So I'm just going to turn my polygons off and turn my lines on. And I'm just going to deselect that full frame. And there we have it. We've done our camera track. So 35 minutes for a very simple sort of, usually once you've done this will like take you like no time at all. It's just because I'm talking through it, and we'll build some geo that we need. But for these shots, when we do some sort of extra little bit of post-viz, we'll sort of explain what these ones are going in these ones a bit better. Cool, so now that's done, I will save it. We don't need to version it up, I'm just going to overwrite because it's pretty simple. So the first thing that I want to do is go export project, Maya. So this is now going to export our Maya file, and probably best to go to our camera, and you want to make sure you export it at the start frame this starts at. So we've got some frame handles, so we've got quite a few here, so we need to make sure our camera starts at 977. So if we go to Maya, start frame 977, and you don't want to change anything on here, we'll just go export, and we'll go to our Booble 01 camera match move, got 3DE, and we will make a Maya file. We'll call this Booble B01 CMM V01. Cool, so that's exported our camera. So now we'll go to File. We need to export our Nuke distortion node. So we'll go to File this time and Export, then Export Nuke LD node. Go to File Name. We'll just make another one called Nuke. Let's call this Booble B01 Nuke LD node V01. And click OK. So now we've exported that out. What we can do is, usually for the sake of it, I would just run warp for our sort of undistorted plate. And just because I'm not bothered about the overscan, because for me, I can just do it quite easily in the render settings. But I know a lot of people have asked how to set up the overscan. So in this case, we will do the next one where we'll create the proper overscan. So I won't render it out of here. In the next one, we'll just do it in Nuke and do a quick overscan. So we are now done with the tracking for this one. And I'll probably go through and track all of the other ones as well, doing the same. So hopefully you've enjoyed that tutorial. I know it's been quite long. It's been a single frame lineup. I've showed you for some reason the nodal thing wasn't working, but you have camera constraints here. and we've done our camera and exported everything out. So yeah, and if you want to know more about 3D equalizer, I've got tons and tons of tutorials on that, so don't worry. Look through the playlists and you'll be sorted for life. But yeah, so our next one we'll just do the overscan play. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And yeah, let's see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.